Hello, I'm bulk filming, so yes, this is an outfit you've seen before, but who cares, because it's pretty, I like it. So right now for me it is completely dark outside, it's about midnight and it's dark and it's dark. Amazing, Anna, you should write a book. Description is just off the charts. The point of that was saying that for me, it's currently dark and cold and rainy outside, but I hope that by the time you're watching this, the weather is beautiful and the sun is streaming through your windows and the air is warm and balmy and you've got your sunglasses on and wind blowing through your hair, whatever. I just want it to be summer now. We've had so much crap weather, so that's what that was, is that it's dark now for me, but the sun is on its way. This is why I shouldn't bulk film, because by the time I get to the second or third video, it's just too much. Like, my brain is like, no, you've said too many words and now I'm going to fail you because you shouldn't say that much. Stop, stop, stop. So I'm going to combat my mushy brain and try and bring you today's video, which is going to be my summer TBR or my summer reading list. And I don't tend to set TBR simply because I just mood read. I feel like when I set myself a certain goal, like whether that's numerical or like certain books I want to read, I just feel pressure and then I feel guilty if I read something else and it's just like not fun. But I feel like summer, 3 months, fairly long amount of time, so I'm not going to feel too like restricted. I've only got 10 books here, so I think 10 books across 3 months is fine. I'm obviously going to be able to read other books in between, so it's fine. And I'm not like religious about reading books set in summer, only in summer, and reading books set in winter, only in winter. But with some books I do feel like there are certain times of year that would enhance your reading experience if you read it during that time. So for example, if I've got like a witchy book on my TBR and it's like August, September, I'll maybe think, okay, wait till October because that would just really enhance the experience. Or if I have like a particularly dark thriller, I might want to read it like in winter time when it's dark and cold outside. And so the 10 books that I've picked out, for whatever reason, I feel like would be enhanced if I read them during the summer period, and that's why they're on this list. And obviously I will get into the reason why as I talk about the books. The first one is pretty self-explanatory. It is Malibu Rising, the new release from Queen Taylor Jenkins Reid, who wrote The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo and Daisy Jones and the Six, 2 books I completely adore with every fibre of my being. And this book literally has Malibu in the title and it is like a sort of peachy sunset with ocean waves. So I feel like if I didn't read this during summer, it would just be a very wasted opportunity. I don't know what this is going to be about, but I know that Taylor Jenkins Reid's writing is just so beautiful and impeccable and so visual as well. Whenever I read her work I can always picture it like a film in my head, like a proper irritating film student. So I feel like if this is going to give me summer beachy vibes, I want to try and read it in the summer. The next book I really want to get to this summer is Snowflake by Louise Nealon, which is really kindly sent to me by Readers First, and it's a beautiful hardback edition that I just love this sort of like duochrome cover. It's very striking, and this is a coming of age novel, I believe, set in Ireland. So I think obviously like what happens to every single novel of like coming of age millennial fiction from Ireland just always gets compared to Sally Rooney, which sometimes makes sense but sometimes doesn't, so I'm not going to make that comparison until I've read it. But if you were trying to place it somewhere, think maybe along those lines. I'm not entirely sure. Sorry, I am just checking on my camera because it has been pissing me off and it just suddenly shuts off for no reason whilst I'm like mid-sentence and doesn't tell me until like a minute later, so I've just been rambling for no reason. Anyway, I want to read this, and it is a coming of age novel like I said, and it follows Debbie as she sort of, you know, is leaving her very small family home to like venture out into the big world. And it says it's a startling, honest, laugh and cry novel about growing up and leaving home, only to find that you've taken it with you. Snowflake is a novel for a generation and for everyone who's taken those first terrifying steps toward adulthood. I graduated last summer into a pandemic and I have taken no steps into adulthood, so I feel like this will be a very good time to read this one, and I want to get to it very soon. Next up, I want some good old escapism. So I would love to read this summer Trials of Apollo, The Tyrant's Tomb, and Trials of Apollo, The Tower of Nero, which are the last two books in the Trials of Apollo series by Rick Riordan, which is a Percy Jackson spin-off. So these take place in like the mythical world of, you know, Greek gods and Greek heroes, but, you know, they exist in our modern day world. You know Percy Jackson, you've been there, right? You know what that is. I don't have to explain. But these books are always so much fun, so many like fun adventures, and summer is such a good month for just like escapist fantasy, like just lying on a beach and just like tumbling into a completely new adventure and just like, you know, coming away from it hours later completely burnt red and being like, oh crap. You know, there was one holiday where we went to France and I took like 3 of the Mortal Instruments books with me, and I just read them like back to back on the beach for hours and hours and hours on end, like listening to the waves, and just a good vibe, you know, just. And speaking of Greek mythology, sort of, Trials of Apollo, we are talking about Greek mythology. I would also love to get to Troy by Stephen Fry and Pandora's Jar by Natalie Haynes, and these are both sort of non-fiction tellings of the Greek myth. So Troy by Stephen Fry is a non-fiction book, and he wrote Mythos, which I read and loved, which is basically his sort of comedic retellings of the myths, and he wants to make it like very accessible, and is really against the sort of elitism that kind of covers like classics and ancient literature, because these are just stories like in the Bible, you know, stories that you could teach to children. You know, they're very like almost like fairy tales. You know, they're like central texts that we grow up, and like central texts that informed literally every other piece of fiction, and not like just foundational texts, right? And everyone should have access to those foundational texts, because you know what, they're foundational and they're important and they're enjoyable. And what is so delicious about the Greek gods is that, you know, fairy tales were like cautionary tales, you know, we're trying to teach you how you should behave and like the dangers of the world and like how to be a good person and like morals and heroes. But what I love about Greek gods is that so many of them are just shit and chaotic, and they eat their children. We love it. And I think that's what has made them so fascinating for writers over the centuries, is that it's just chaos, like literal chaos, and the Greek gods in the stories just have like no qualms about admitting that they are shit and like agents of chaos and ruin, and that humans are terrible and despicable, and they're honest about that. So I'm like, oh, I can vibe with it, sure, I'll get on board. And obviously this is going to be a retelling of the myth of Troy. We all know that one, right? Helen and the Trojans. I do know it deep down, I just sometimes things elude me, but that's why I want to read this. And also, like, summer is such a perfect time to be getting into Greek myths. Like, every single aesthetic Pinterest board that you see for like Song of Achilles or Circe or even Percy Jackson, like, it's just sun-soaked beaches and like olives and, you know, tree branches and pomegranates and like these white beautiful statues glistening, you know, against a blue sky. I've been to Greece, I visited Athena's Parthenon. Just stunning. I love the visuals, and it's just so warm and sunny, and I just want to be carted away to Greece, you know, where yes there is war, and yes there is murder, and yes there is conflict, but it's also sunny, and that's what I want to read about this summer. And I also want to get to Pandora's Jar by Natalie Haynes, which has been on my TBR for quite a long time, and I think the cover is gorgeous, and this basically just focuses on women in the Greek myths, and the fact that women in the Greek myths, like women fucking everywhere, have been a bit overlooked and a bit typecast as like damsels, or, you know, evil, you know, because it's Pandora's Jar, and we all know that Pandora was literally blamed for every single evil in the world because she opened a box. She opened a box, right? A box that she was told you shouldn't open. Literally anyone would open a box they were told not to open, and somehow this makes her the bastion of evil and all women are bad. So basically this book is about women in the Greek myths that have been lambasted or, you know, incorrectly portrayed for centuries, and basically sort of shedding a bit more light and a bit more kindness on those figures, and I'm very excited to read it. The next book I want to read is The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett, simply for the reason it's been on my TBR for far too long and it is so hyped, and I don't like missing out on things, so I want to read it soon and I can join in with all the conversations about it. Another book I really want to read is The Dark Bolt by V.E. Schwab, and this is a bind-up, I believe, of her novels The Archived and The Unbound, and it also has a bonus short story. So my first read of 2021 was The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, which I loved. My first 5-star of the year. Loved it. It lives in my head rent-free. I love it. I also really enjoy Victoria Schwab's Darker Shade of Magic series, and I have her other books on my TBR. I've got Vicious on my TBR, this is on my TBR, and I really want to get to this soon. Like I said, summer is a great time for escapism, just finding a nice, beautiful, sunny spot to read with a view and just falling into another world for a couple of hours. Nothing will match it, and I would love to do that with this book. It is a hunk of chunk, so there's a lot to get my teeth into, and I'm ready. I remember when I was a kid and I used to go on holidays and I was only allowed to pick like 1 or 2 books to take with me. So I would always make a point of choosing like the thickest book to take with me so that I would be sure it would last me like the longest time, because that is the fear, right? If you take 2 skinny books with you on holiday, what if you finish them in like the first couple of days and then you're bookless? The horror. So little me literally thought that was the worst thing in the world. I could not possibly risk not having a book. So poor tiny me with like, you know, a tiny little backpack would shove the largest, you know, books I could find in there, just so they would like be sure to last me. So this gives me those vibes, and I wanna fall into this summer, and please. I would also really love to get to the Fran Lebowitz Reader by Fran Lebowitz this summer, and I talked a lot about the Fran Lebowitz and Martin Scorsese Netflix series Pretend It's a City. If you haven't watched that, please go and watch that. It's incredible. I watched it in lockdown and it just, you know, got me so excited to travel. New York is one of my favourite places. It's set in New York, and Fran Lebowitz is a very famous like New Yorker, and a lot of her comedy and a lot of her writing and a lot of her sort of material is about New York and complaining about New York, but also just completely being in love with the city and all of that, and it's just a place that I love too, so I love hearing her talk about it. And this book, obviously the cover, just she's in New York and it's that vibe, and this is a collection of her essays and her collected writing over the course of her career, and I'm just really excited to read it. And because I can't go to New York this summer, and I probably won't be able to go for quite a while because, you know, there's still a pandemic on, no matter how many people are convinced that it's over, it's not. So this is going to be my way of vicariously holidaying in New York this summer, and I really can't wait to read it. And the last book on my little summer TBR sort of reading list is The Sopranos by Alan Warner, and this has been on my TBR for so long. So my journey with this story was that a couple of years ago I saw the play at the National Theatre. It was absolutely impeccable. It's about 4 or 5, I don't know how many, 4 or 5 girls in Scotland travelling from their sort of religious Catholic school to a residential trip in the town, in the city, where they're going to like sing a choir song at this place. But basically while they're in Edinburgh, I believe it is, they just go a bit nuts because, you know, they've been like held and reined in for so long, and this is their one weekend, their one chance to like live a proper life and have all the teenage experiences that they want. So they go a bit feral, and it is just very silly and very, very fun. And it all takes place in one day, and it's very chaotic, and it's like a rip-roaring adventure, and I'm just ready for it. So I love the play, I bought the play, I have that as well on my TBR. And last year or the year before, I can't remember, I think it was 2 years ago now, the film version that they made was premiered at the BFI London Film Festival, and I was very lucky to see it like the day it premiered, and like the cast and director were there, and they talked about the journey to like get it made, and it's been in the works for a very long time. And I remember at the Q&A afterwards they talked a lot about how this often got compared to Derry Girls, and I believe someone in the audience asked if like it was irritating because this book was published like 20 years before Derry Girls was a thing. And they were saying that like actually there's quite a lot of differences between Derry Girls and The Sopranos, and the fact that, you know, everyone compares these two things just shows you that there has to be so much more made in that genre of like young teen girls coming of age and, you know, being a bit rebellious and a bit raucous, because the fact that they only get compared to this one other thing just shows you like there just needs to be a lot more there. And that's so true, because this is such a wonderful story, and I think, you know, a lot of young girls would see themselves in these characters that are rude and brash and bawdy and, you know, vulgar in a lot of ways, and just wonderful. And this gives me like ultimate summer vibes of, you know, being young and wanting to escape and wanting to carve out an identity for yourself for the first time, and just wanting adventure and wanting to romanticize your life, as everyone on TikTok is telling me that I need to be doing, apparently. So I'm very excited to read this one. It's a story that like I've said, I'm familiar with and that I've loved as a play and as a film, so finally it's time to experience it as a book the way it was originally intended, and I'm very excited to get to this very soon. Oh, God. So these are all of the books that I'm planning to get to this summer. I did say there was 10 of them, but let's see if my counting skills failed me. No, I was right, there are 10. There are 10 there. There are 10, and they're gonna fall. No, they're not. Are they? There we go. I take care of my babies. Look at them. They're so safe. They're so fine. Please let me know what books you plan to be reading this summer and what kind of genres you're in the mood for, like what you're going to be reaching for. I would love to know. Give me some ideas. And yeah, I will see you very soon with another video soon. Bye.